You know, it was like, or,
His eyes was twisting with venom and ill intentions. And I know, there we go, L's coming to breakfast here at some point. Although he's going to try and do what he can do, but when it don't work, he's going to switch, and he's going to do what he's going to do in here. But that's what he does. But it's not Tyson. Tyson's a slick boxer. You know, what I would have done if I'd have been him, I'd have mixed a bit of slick boxing with that stuff. But he wasn't physically fit enough to do that. He hadn't had time to do it. And it's easier to stand there toe-to-toe than move around boxing when you're not in proper condition, you know. But he sparred too many rounds for my liking. 10s and 12 rounds, should know better than that. You don't need that amount of sparring. It's like having 2 12-round fights in 1 week. You don't need that amount of sparring. Even though you've got headgear on big gloves, you still got gigantic men swinging away at you, still taking stick, and it does take the edge off you. But I thought he should have knew that. I thought Sugar Hill should have knew that, but they didn't. You know, and that's what it is, you know. But they've got away with it, haven't they? It worked for Tyson, but it's not how they've got away with it. Tyson's that damn good.
What's good, family? And obviously, first things first, I've got to say a big shout out to my general, Lewis Perkins, for coming through and boosting up your man the YB's calling situation nicely. Any other generals out there who want to join Team YB, receive exclusive membership, leaked, extra leaked content, you know what to do. Me too, that blue join button, you're done now. Now, so we just heard there from your man's John Fury. Now, this is actually quite a controversial topic, truth be known, especially within boxing circles. But I'm surprised. Tell a lie, I'm not surprised. I actually have to give John Fury some credit for being honest here. A lot of the time in life, when people are on a roll, it's easy just to bandwagon. And in fact, I give John Fury a lot of credit when it comes to, yeah, don't be wrong, no one's perfect, yeah? Did John Fury duck Mickey Theo? Absolutely. However, the facts are, when it comes to his son and kind of sorting his son's training situation out, he's been on point. What do we know? John Fury was really the only one publicly to call out Ben Davidson. Don't forget, people, at the time, it was actually a very controversial opinion to have. Back in, what year was it? After the first Wilder fight, John Fury really was the only one saying Ben Davison must go. Everyone else was saying how great. I think Ben Davison was up for an Oscar or something. I'm pretty sure, you know what I'm saying, 100%. I'm pretty sure after the first Wilder fight, Ben Davison was up for an Oscar or a Grammy, something like that. They were giving him awards. I think he might have won Fighter of the, or Trainer of the Year, Trainer of the Century, I think. Everyone was gassing it up about how great that performance was, given that, oh, look at Ben Davison, look what he's done. He took the man from the brink of this to this. Wow. John Fury said, no, my son's better than that. My son's better than having to peel himself off the canvas twice. That's not good enough. And I hate to say it, but in this 2021, there is a lot of that going around. There's a lot of mediocrity going around. I'll say the same about AJ's team. AJ's team, cool, going 11 rounds with Pulev. That was A. I think AJ rated it a B or something, or A or a B. You went 11 rounds with a man who, no aggression having ass, Klitschko, go out there in 3 rounds. And that was 6 years ago. You fought a 41-year-old old man who was never no good anyway. Took you 10 rounds and you're celebrating that. And you're meant to be a super athlete. You're supposed to be Africanulese. So yeah, like I said, I rate John Fury because whether his opinion's right or wrong, which by the way, on the last 2 occasions, I do believe he's right. Yeah, he's absolutely correct about Ben Davidson. And look how it's played out. Yeah, whether or not Tyson Fury listened to his pops, the fact of the matter is, John Fury called out Ben Davison being inadequate or not being what Tyson Fury needed. Next thing you know, Tyson Fury put weight on, went to the Kronk, and now is arguably having some of the best fights, or certainly having some of the most entertaining and financially rewarding fights of his career. However, with that credit to John Fury, yes, Sugar Hill's on a roll at the moment in terms of public perception. However, he's a great trainer and whatnot, and I think he is. As far as it goes, the fact of the matter is, in that second Wilder fight, the first Wilder fight with Sugar Hill, they managed to turn around. Tyson Fury had spent the last, 6-7 years dancing around with Peter Fury. Think about the Fury versus Vlad fight. Fury versus Klitschko, all dancing around. Yeah, Tyson Fury had been dancing around for about 6-7 years, consistently, with Peter Fury and Ben Davison. So whatever Sugar Hill did in 7 weeks, they were able to do something that Team AJ haven't been able to do in 10 years, and that is enhance aggressiveness. And by the way, that second Wilder fight, it was also smart aggressiveness as well. Now this third fight, as we heard from John Fury, this third fight wasn't as sharp. Now John Fury says part of it was the fact that he was off with his daughter, and that means he only was able to train for 6 weeks, I think. But the other important part, as you heard there, where he actually was pretty critical of Sugar Hill, was the fact that he alleges that Sugar Hill and Tyson had him doing too much heavy sparring in that short camp. Now, one thing I will say before we analyse it more is that you do have to bear in mind, because of baby Athena, because of Tyson Fury's daughter's situation, they didn't have a lot of time. So from Sugar Hill's point of view, what do you want to do? Do you want to, okay, we've only got 6 weeks, do you want to cram it or not bother at all? So it's a bit of a catch-22. What do you do in that situation? Do you not do any at all? I think obviously, as an outsider, it's easy for us to sit on the fence and say, well, you kind of go in the middle. But what is the middle? Who knows? John Fury is a legend. We don't know the specifics. John Fury is a legend. They were doing two lots of 10 to 12 round sparring sessions. Now, how many weeks was he doing that for? Who knows? Was he doing it for the full kind of out of 6 week camp? Well, we had 4 weeks of double sessions. I don't know. I'm not sure of the specifics. But either way, me personally, it's difficult because in one breath, I was criticising Deontay Wilder for not having no sparring in. All we saw Deontay Wilder doing, all we heard Deontay Wilder doing, was doing pads. But in a way, I think it's kind of, you have to make your training specific. For example, Deontay Wilder has proven when he's put under pressure, I've never seen Deontay Wilder deal with being under pressure. I've never seen him catch and counter. When Deontay Wilder performs well, it's when he's given loads of time and he's able to line you up. I've never seen him really be effective or win rounds toe to toe, if that makes sense. And he knew what was happening. He knew likely Tyson Fury was coming and trying to replicate the second fight. So yeah, I mean, and that's the thing as well. Unlike Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder had a full 18-month camp. He didn't have interruptions. So I think in a way you got to do more planning. This whole business of a 6-week camp, I never understood that. I never understood. You're an athlete. You should be doing it year round. And when you approach a sport year round, it means you can put a lot of that hard sparring in. In my opinion, I believe 2 to 4 weeks out from a big fight, you shouldn't be doing no heavy headshots. Yes, you can do body shots, but I don't think you should be doing any heavy headshots 2 to 4 weeks out because of the reasons John Fury talks about in terms of the sharpness. I think you should be a year-round athlete and do as much sparring as such as, obviously be smart about it, but I'm saying you put the bulk of your work in up until that 2 to 4 week grace period. Because, like John Fury says, and I've heard it a lot of times anecdotally, being banged in the head it takes miles off. It takes that sharpness off. And I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? Never mind anecdote. That makes perfect sense to me. Being banged in the head ain't good for nothing. A week out, 2 to 4 weeks out, or maybe you should taper it down. So, like for example, maybe 4 weeks out, you do. I mean, that's the thing as well. John Fury makes a good point about 10 to 12 rounds. Maybe 4 weeks out, you just do one session of 6 rounds and keep the intensity there. 6 intense rounds. And you know what I'm saying? You don't really need to be doing full 12-round spars when you're about to go into a 12-round fight. If you can get a few high-quality sparring partners in and just do a couple of rounds, we're talking 2-3 weeks out, if that makes sense. Just do a 4 or 6 rounder. Intense. One fresh one in, if that makes sense. Back to back to back to back. I'm sure that can get the principle down, or the principles you want to test and kind of the skills you want to work on. I'm pretty sure you can have that accomplished 2 to 4 weeks out in them shorter periods. Because now thinking about it, he's right. Doing 10 to 12 rounds in the lead in the close vicinity of the fight. I'm not sure what that's trying to do. Now, arguably, I'm not sure. I'm not in Sugar Hill's mind, but if I was to guess, I think it's that old style. Well, iron sharpens iron and all that rubbish. Who knows though? Maybe it's not. Maybe it wasn't the case. But the fact John Fury is saying it, why would he say it for? Why would he? If it wasn't noteworthy, if it wasn't a red flag, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have brought it up. Because it's not like John Fury's a hater. He's being honest, and we have to admit ourselves here. That wasn't a sharp Tyson Fury by no stretch of the imagination, if that makes sense. That wasn't. Compare it to the second fight. I guess you could argue Deontay Wilder did put more of a fight up this time, and obviously Tyson Fury, unlike the second fight, he didn't get put down. So who knows? But again, what I would say is, obviously we'll never know now, but for example, look at AJ. Now AJ versus Ruiz 1, he was alleged to have been concussed in sparring. Now, scientifically speaking, concussions are almost like a diagnosis. However, bottom line is, every time you get hit in the head, you are on the spectrum. You are on the scale of a concussion, if that makes sense. You've got, on one end, you've got people like Michael Watson, innit? That's one end. If you've been Michael Watson, that's one end. Another end would just be a light tap. But every time you get hit, you land in somewhere between Michael Watson and a light tap. Bottom line. Now, again, going back to the AJ analogy, he was alleged before the Ruiz fight to have been rocked in sparring, and the marks were on his face, and he was looking vacant. He had that vacant look the whole week. He looked vacant. He looked like he wasn't there. He looked like a shell of himself. And obviously, he went into the ring, and whatever happened. And the first thing that touched him set him off. And that's what happens when you've been concussed. As the research says, when you've already had some sort of head trauma, it's like your threshold drops massively. A shot that you'd normally take, it takes 1/10 of that, and you're fully Michael Watson. Yeah. Now, applying that same principle to Tyson Fury, for all we know, now we're not saying he was massively mashed up all around in sparring. However, we do know. Don't forget, people, back in July, some of the rumours were the reason he pulled out was because he got worked in sparring. And unlike other people's low IQ teams, Tyson Fury's relatively intelligent team, they decided to pull the fight, and rightfully so. Now, Tyson Fury went into the October fight bringing in them same heavy-handed sparring partners. Jared Anderson is a notable name, and the reason I'm bringing up Jared Anderson is because if you actually follow the narrative that's been going around Jared Anderson, you can tell that he was giving Tyson Fury the work, because Shane Fury came out and said, "Yeah, watch out for Jared Anderson. He's serious." Now, no one gives out them kind of ratings for nothing, and bear in mind there was other big names in there. Joseph Parker, F.A. Jagba, they weren't. His name wasn't ringing. So why was Jared Anderson's name ringing out of nowhere? Obviously, the rumours are likely true. He was giving Tyson Fury the work. Yeah? But like I said, all it takes is you to be rocked to some extent in camp. And then, when a shot lands in the fight, normally you'd be able to be fully compos mentis. But once you've been compromised, you get touched by Deontay Wilder in the 5th round, I think it was. And then what happens? All of your cognitive function is, what's the word I'm looking for? All of your or whatever level you were working on, you've now been diminished to X given level, to a much lower level. And that, I can't lie to you, that is, when you compare it to the second fight, it was almost as if Tyson Fury was operating not as sharp. And I mean, the fact Sugar Hill Tyson Fury isn't that kind of fighter that he needs to be told a million times, but the fact Sugar Hill was screaming at him, use the jab, and even then it didn't really click for him. I do think it's possible he had some sort of micro concussion going on during the fight, and certainly after Wilder put him down with that big shot. So yeah, I think this is more to do with not so much, well, yes, Sugar Hill as a coach and whatnot needs to take this on board, but I think it's more of a cultural thing. There's boxing as a culture, or most combat sports have a culture of just doing mad work and having mad spars and whatnot. I think there's a time and place for it, bottom line. A time and place. Now, is that time and place 2 to 4 weeks out? I don't believe so. If I was training a fighter, it wouldn't. 2 weeks out, we ain't doing no heavy head shots. Because in my opinion, guess what? If you haven't, whatever you haven't learned, 2 weeks out, guess what? You ain't going to learn it anyway. Whatever you need to learn, do it in the time before the last 2 to 4 weeks. That's the bottom line. If you're so desperate to learn something, that you're prepared to lose brain cells 2 weeks out, guess what? You should have put some of that effort in. Don't be telling me, I can't get motivated. And this is something that a lot of fighters, and in fact even Tyson Fury himself has been or can be blamed for at times. We get this whole narrative of, if I haven't got a date, if I haven't got the contract signed, I can't train. I struggle to train. You best get training, because otherwise, when you don't treat the sport properly, you end up like this now. 6 weeks out, and you're trying to rush, and there's no need to be doing that. If you plan and strategize and structure your training, things work 10 times better, and you don't end up only having 6 weeks left on a Ricky Hatton thing, cramming, sparring in. I'm sorry, but boxing is the kind of sport where you can't. To be honest, all sports you can't cram training in. You need time to give your body, you need time to give your body time to adapt. That's where it's during recovery is when your body really makes its gains, and you can't rush recovery. You need time. And that works even more so with boxing when your brain's literally getting rocked. Yeah? That brain must recover. Must. And going in there and repeated damage, and even when you think of it from a long-term point of view, long-term repeated damage, it's just something that, especially for a fighter like Tyson Fury, who, at 32 years old now, you have to almost ask yourself, I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure of the boxers so much, but I've heard of some UFC fighters, I've heard of some certain UFC fighters who, once you get to a certain level, you don't even really need to spar anymore. Now, I'm not saying you go for that one, but I'm saying certainly you can be tactical about when you're sparring. And 2 to 4 weeks out, in my opinion, should be a massive red zone for sparring, for headshots. 100%. Load it up beforehand. 2 to 4 weeks out, it's done then. Whatever we haven't done, we haven't done. Because in my opinion, it's almost better to have missed things. It's almost better to lose a bit of fitness, because you make it up in sharpness, if that makes sense. You make it up from the fact that your brain's sharp and your head's clear. The best analogy I've got for that not sparring thing would be like almost weight cutting. People cut weight, if I go down to a smaller weight I can fight bigger. But sometimes you find that fighters who don't cut weight, they end up performing even better, because their head's clear. Same principle. You think, I better spar, I need to be sharp, I need to be whatever. Well, guess what? If you don't spar and your head's clear, especially when you've had 15 years in the game, how many times have you sparred? Do you think an extra 2 spars the week before are going to make a difference? Especially, and that's why it's so important to have structured your training, and if you've had a theoretical 12, 16 week camp, and you've loaded the sparring in the first 8 weeks, what you think? Are you going to forget that? I don't think so. But yeah, I'm glad John Fury's, because I believe everyone's human, and it's good that even during good periods, you're always looking to analyse and improve. Because one thing I will say is, yes, Sugar Hill, yes, I love and respect the fact that he wants for the KOs, which is a very rare thing these days. To be honest, apart from Sugar Hill and Shane McGuigan, I don't hear no trainers talking about we plan and we structure for the KO. So I rate that. However, it can sometimes go the other way, where that bullish mentality, that bullish 1980s mentality, we forget the things that we've learned in the last 40 years. And leaving brain cells in training camp is one of them things we've learned. The old fighters did, that now we can adapt and, in my opinion, improve. So John Fury, credit to you for calling this one out, and I hope that in the future, everyone, to be honest, it's not Sugar Hill, it's not just Tyson Fury, everyone needs to take responsibility. Tyson needs to take responsibility for his training. Sugar Hill needs to take responsibility for his managerial skills and himself. Because even as a trainer, you have to influence how you train your athlete. Meaning that, listen Tyson, I'm not sure what plans you've got, but if you want to work with me, we're having a 12-week camp. And this is how we're doing things. And that's where I do really respect Shane McGuigan. Because he says, when I'm in camp, it's my way or the highway. And I believe that's what you've got to do. But the problem is, in 2021, a lot of fighters, they seem to be running the roost, don't they? They run their promotional game, they run their managerial game, they run their training game. No one seems to be able to tell them anything. They just run around doing what they want. And I believe it's to truly accomplish yourself, you have to put your foot down. Bottom line. Sugar Hill must say, we're doing 12-week camp. Yeah? 14, 16-week camp. I don't care if you haven't got a date yet. We're getting in fight shape. So we don't have to rush. Yeah, no doubt.